Hello there, BookTube. My name is Daniel. Welcome back to my channel, Guilty Feet. I've got no rhythm. And today I'm going to do a little bit of a discussion and a review of a book that I just read. And I was astonished. The reason behind the discussion is I was astonished when I finished this book to see how many books I'd read by the same author. Now, if you ask me to list my favorite authors, I don't think this would be in the top 10, and yet somehow over the last 20 years I've read 8 novels by this author. And so I guess the discussion is, does this happen to you? How have I come back to this author time and again, who I don't think of as my greatest and the best thing, but there seems to be some comfort in coming back. In a couple of cases there were series, so I read another one because I'd read one in a series. That's kind of a thing for me. Also, I like series books. I like books that continue a story, but some of these are standalones as well. So I've just read 8 books by the author. The author I'm talking about today is Kate Atkinson, a British novelist who first came onto my radar. I've got this copy from April 1998. So that's 25 years ago. I believe this was her first novel, Behind the Scenes at Museum, which won the Whitbread Book of the Year, which is how it would have come on my radar, even though I bought this copy secondhand. £3.50. That would have been from my bookshop in Edgware. This is after I moved to Israel, so I must have been back in London and gone in there and bought this book. I have in my head the feeling that my sister-in-law, my wife's sister in London, had read this. Somehow it was an award winner, and I picked it up and read it, and I remember it fondly. So this is 25 years ago. This is her first novel. The one the Whitbread, I think, then became the Costa. I'm not sure, does it still exist, or it was changed, or I don't know what it is now, but that was the award, and they used to give out 5 different types of awards. There was a best novel, there was a best first novel, and then a best poetry and best children's, I think, and then of the 5 winners of each of the categories, one would win the book of the year. So this one, best first novel, and then the overall book of the year, if I remember correctly, back in, must have been 98 or 97 anyway. Remember this fondly. So it was a good read, great way to discover a new novelist, a new writer, and enjoyed that. So much so that I went on and bought another book, the next book. So this is, I also bought this in the same time. So this must have been out a while, and picked this up secondhand. This I may have picked up new. Look, it's all faded there. That's just from sitting on my shelf. Because the date I've written in front of this is also 498, and this doesn't have a pencil setting. It's a secondhand copy with dust coming off it. So I bought this about the same time. So I read the first one, and then would have gone on to read this again. So where am I at in my life at this point? 498. 2 young kids with a third on the way, and this is what I'm reading. And so I'd enjoyed Behind the Scenes. This is Human Crogate, by the way. Good title, great title, but I don't know much about this at all. And I remember sort of coming away from this thinking, yeah, I think there was some similarities. Also, there's like some dark family history and things going on. Yeah, I came away from this thinking, okay, I think I'm done with Kate Atkinson. I got the point. 2 novels, great, stick them up on the shelf. 2 novels by an interesting author. This is Black Swan was the publisher, and they always have this lovely large print, nice, easy reading, good modern fiction writer, and I'm kind of done. And that was it. So I thought I was done with Kate Atkinson, and after that she started publishing a series of novels. So these were 2 standalone bits of what we would call classified as literary fiction, and she started publishing a series of novels which were ostensibly genre detective fiction. Now, when you get to them and read the Jackson Brodie books, they're not straightforward crime and a detective solves it. There are literary works where things happen and the motivating plot is around some kind of crime, and Jackson Brodie is an atypical kind of detective figure, if he's even a detective. But I kind of skipped those. I was reading a lot of crime fiction. I read a lot of crime fiction. I tend to focus mainly on the US. Having read 2 of Kate Atkinson's novels, I decided I was going to skip this sort of British-based crime stuff, because that doesn't really tend to satisfy me usually, and I focus on US, maybe even sort of West Coast based crime. So just sort of gave up and I'd moved on from Kate Atkinson, skipped the Jackson Brodie books. The first one's called Case Histories. At some point, the BBC televised those Jackson Brodie books. I think there was 1 or 2 series of, and they were called case histories, which are named after the first book, with Jason Isaacs. Hello to Jason Isaacs. Went to my school, a few years older than me, as Jackson Brodie. And at some point, having decided not to read the books, I watched the series. I must have found some way to access it here. Maybe it was on BBC Prime when we had a TV, or maybe I found some less legal ways of finding and viewing the series back then, but watched it because it was kind of fun, and I don't know why I watched it. I think it was the kind of thing I just watched on my own. So low stakes, not like American crime thrillers. Anyway, enjoyed it, liked Jason Isaacs, liked the show. Done. Wasn't going to read any more Kate Atkinson. Then Life After Life comes out. Huge, massive, global bestseller. Kate Atkinson's back in the news. Won a Costa. Did she win the Costa Award? Was it? It's a sticker over what happened. So the Whitbread, which she originally won, I think she goes on and is nominated or wins the something. Life After Life, a huge book, and so kind of be and different, very different to the earlier stuff. Totally different to the Jackson Brodie stuff. Revised history, and there were sort of hints about what it was about. I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but it piqued my interest enough. But I might not have just gone out and bought it. And I find my copy. So this is many years later. So I read those in '98, skipped, and then in 2014 I picked this up. And if you look up here, there's a sticker which says only £2.99 when you buy the Daily Telegraph, which leads me to believe that I picked this up at the airport. So I must have been flying back from London to Israel at the airport, probably Luton Airport, makes sense. And this would have been the week's offer that if you buy the newspaper, and my parents always took the Telegraph, and I was never a big fan of the Telegraph, but buying the Telegraph, I would get this book. The Telegraph would have been £1 or something, and you get this book for £2.99 instead of the cover price, which was £7.99. And there was enough. It was on my radar enough that for £2.99 for a brand new paperback, I picked it up. Read this. This is a chunky book. This is almost over 600 pages, and terrific. I didn't love it in the way that I could not pick this out why this was the massive global breakout smash, and there's a big book in the States as well. But there was enough in here, and the overall where it's trending to, and what happens by the end of this book is satisfying enough. I think she it's a complete novel. It works on its own merits, and there was enough in here for me to enjoy. I'd also read before this. One second. Yeah, I've also read there is a connection between the Mitfords, and this was compiled by Charlotte Mosley. These are letters between the Mitford sisters, including one of them called is it Unity? Yes, Unity. And in this book, I believe there's a character called Ursula, if I remember correctly. I think there's some connection. Anyway, so this was on my mind, and I got a lot out of Life After Life. After Life, I read. Then turns out she published a sequel to Life After Life called A God in Ruins, where some of the characters in Life After Life reappear and God in the Ruins. So now I've read 4 books by Kate Atkinson. So there's original 2 in 1998, 2014, 2016. I come back and read more, and then decide, at a point when I'm looking for detective fiction written by female authors to try and spread my base of what I like to read, I decided I would come back and read the Jackson Brodie books because they were easy to find secondhand. So I didn't have to pay £7.99 for a brand new book. I could find them for £1.50, £2.50 on eBay, or I used to buy from Awesome Books and get delivered. So the first one, Case Histories, which I don't have here because I've just lent it to someone recently. I got the second one, One Good Turn. And the third one, which is the book I just read, When Will There Be Good News? I'll talk about that in a second. And in between that, I'd also picked up a standalone. I bought this secondhand, even though it's a brand new, it sort of seemed to be an unread hardback, but I picked this up second. Oh, does it say withdrawn from something? No, it doesn't. And this was transcription, so another standalone. So somehow, to date, as of last week, when I read When Will There Be Good News, I've read 8 books by Kate Atkinson, and I know I'm going to read a couple more because When Will There Be Good News is the 3rd in the Jackson Brodie series, and there are still 2 more to go. So I'm going to have ended up in the next couple of years having read 10 books by Kate Atkinson, And that, you know, there's a comfort in coming back to an author you like, and specifically the books I'm reading now is this series, Jackson Brodie, following along. There's not necessarily a coherent line through the Jackson Brodie books, and yet each one of them has had enough there to recommend it. And this was the one I read recently. So my question to you is, are there authors who you have surprised yourself or unintentionally ended up reading multiple works by? And these are probably not your top tier must read the second they come out in hardback, must track them down and read them. Like I've got a bunch of those. I read Zadie Smith, and I read Salman Rushdie, and Martin Amis and Ian McEwan, and there's a bunch of authors who, when I name them, James Ellroy in genre, where I'm running after their next new release. Kate Atkinson isn't in that list, and somehow I've acquired and read 8 of her books so far, and I know I'm going to read 2 more. So do you have this in your reading life? Is it a good thing? Am I just returning to a well that's kind of run dry, but there's comfort? Should I be spreading my wings and reading new to me authors? How do you feel, and who are your Kate Atkinson authors in your reading life? Take care. God bless. Bye.